England versus India. The Cricket Badger Test Match Daily Podcast. Can Joe Root's England dominate on home soil? 5 mouth-watering test matches. Can Virat Kohli's India conquer the final frontier? Loving to talk test cricket every day.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. When we were talking to you yesterday, we were full of the joys of spring because India had just won at Lords. And, we have had an evening to sleep on it, looking back at what was a fantastic test match. Absolutely brilliant. I've thoroughly enjoyed those 5 days from London. And to help me talk about all things the second test and maybe have a little bit of a look forward to the third test match as well, I'm joined by Neil Naman and Ash. Ash, we've not had you on this before. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Different to actually be able to see everyone and not just speak to each other like we had for obviously the India series. Very nice.
And we feel like we're sort of sat someone down near your navel, but there's a wonderful view up your nose. But how did you see? I mean, I know you've been a little bit busy. You've been listening to it rather than watching it. But from an English perspective, before we get to our 2 Indian fan badges, who I'm sure can't wait to crow about their success, how did you see it from an English perspective?
Thursday had me worried. I wondered if we'd maybe made the wrong decision at the toss. Did well though. The next 3 days, thought we were in a good position. Still didn't think it was guaranteed we'd win by any stretch of the imagination. And up to probably at half an hour in yesterday, I was delighted. I was thinking, wow, we've actually found a good performance. We're actually clicking as a team a little bit. This is quite worrying, if anything. And
that's the dangerous thing to do, Ash, isn't it?
Wrong. Then
it's
the
very
dangerous. Wrong as we all
As soon as you start to believe, Ash, that's when it comes back to bite you. Let's go to our 2 Indian fan badges then.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was it. As soon as
it's like I'm talking to Australia
at the moment, and then no.
He's in his office. It's like I'm talking to Australia. There's about a 30-second delay on this line, Ash. Neil. I'll bring Naman in for his debut on this as well. Anybody that's listened to the Cricket Badger podcast will know Naman already. But Neil, the victory yesterday was terrific, wasn't it? India winning at the home of cricket, getting ahead in the series. A terrific performance on day 5.
It was absolutely superb. Although I do think that England let us back into it a lot once that mistake was made in the second half of the first session, and the door was opened slightly. Then the bowlers kicked it down and rushed through. I thought it was absolutely superb after the first half hour, 45 minutes, where England were excellent. After that, India got a sniff and didn't let go.
Do you think that England's got carried away with the Jasprit Jimmy situation, tried to stick it up Jasprit's nose and forgot what they're actually supposed to be out there to do?
It was very, very strange. I mean, we're talking about, the second most experienced test player of all time here. Someone who's just come off a series against Neil Wagner, whose stop ball is in his own half. It confused me. It really, really confused me that people of such experience went after a personal vendetta at the expense of the team's goal of winning the test match. And then even beyond the short ball theory, which I thought was a bad idea when you're up against tail-enders, people who history says can't bat, just aim at the stumps. Try bowl them, try and nick them off, play the same way that you have against the best players. But the field settings, what was that about?
The thing is, Neil, a good ball against Virat Kohli is a good ball against Jasprit Bumrah, isn't it? The guy averages 3 in Test cricket. You put 6 men back on the fence, and you're treating him like a batsman, and all of a sudden he starts to bat like Brian Lara.
Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't just a batsman. It's like he was Don Bradman. I think Jasprit Bumrah is not going to hurt you if you bowl
That
conventionally.
might be a little bit of a stretch now.
But I mean, it was that level of fear. He's not someone who's going to get caught on the boundary most of the time. It's going to be very much getting bowled or nicking off to the keeper or the slips. Just bowl conventionally. He won't be able to handle it. So the whole period was weird, especially from people as experienced as Root and Anderson, and someone who generally has a cool head in Root. So yeah, very, very strange, and that definitely turned it, because India at the start of the day had a total which maybe could have been defended, with a good tailwind. Add another 50 and we're probably looking 50-50 at a 200. But then you get 220, 230 targets, and it just keeps tilting. And you give additional confidence to bowlers who have already been having a few verbals and are up for a fight. And they're not like the India of old. They won't back down. There was an article by Lawrence Booth this morning that said India in the old days would be expected to take the abuse and smile back. But that is not Virat Kohli's way. He will fight fire with fire. And as Lawrence put it, there was a certain colonial condescension in that's the way that India would be expected to behave by older England and Australian teams. Virat is basically an Australian in an Indian skin. He grew up with the 2000 Ponting Australia. He will go back at them.
If you're watching Virat, I'm really sorry about that. He didn't mean it.
But he's got that mindset, hasn't he? He's got a Ponting era Australian mindset where he will go back at you with the way that he plays, with his words as well. And he'll show no weakness.
I'm fine with that, Neil, as well. I mean, I did a tweet this morning. There's the lovely little video of Virat giving his little team talk on the edge of the Lord's outfield, just ahead of England starting their second innings. And we all know what happened next. But he was basically looking around his circle in this huddle, and he was saying to them, kind of effectively, we're taking this seriously. I don't want to see anybody laughing and joking out there. Otherwise, you know what you're going to get. We're going to give them 60 overs of hell. Let's get into them. And the intensity that India showed. Let's move on to Naman, because he sat there for ages. The intensity India showed Naman with the ball through what was supposed to be 60 overs really never let England settle, did they? There was periods in that England innings where you started thinking, has Josh Butler kind of, the overs are ticking down? Are they getting towards the end? But every time you started thinking that, Siraj or somebody went bang bang and took a couple of wickets, and England were right back in the mire again.
To be honest, I wasn't surprised with this intensity. This was always going to come up. Seeing the performance of India in Australia, the bowlers had shown this kind of intensity over there also. So end of the day, what Ravi Shastri means is taking those 20 wickets, because what you will see overseas also, not only in India, it is the bowlers who are winning for India. It's not only the batsmen. So overall, I am totally not surprised. But what I felt is that Bumrah and Shami's innings somewhere took over the England's mindset, and somewhere they were like in two minds, whether to chase, whether to draw, whether what we need to do this, because somewhere they were up for the win, and getting Rishabh Pant in the first 5 or 6 overs, and then looking at this performance, I felt that somewhere it hit their minds, and they were badly hurt with that first innings itself, and it showed in their batting performance. And to be honest, I always feel that 150 is also a hard score to chase on the fifth day. And I don't know why no one is discussing on this, but I was very surprised why Root opted to bowl first on the first day. Looking at their batting lineup, he is the
Oh,
only one who.
trust me now, man. Trust me now, man. In England, a lot of people were talking about that. But Virat Kohli said he'd do the same thing, Neil, didn't he?
Yeah, it's that thing where people come out and say, as well as looking down, you got to look up. And it was there was low cloud. It was gloomy that first day, but the forecast was all that maybe the mornings would be like that, but it'd burn through. So I think, on balance, I would have batted first, but the actual bowling performance from England on day one was mostly good. Possibly they could have made Sharma and Rahul play a bit more, but otherwise they got a lot of movement. It took extreme skill to 270 for 3 doesn't tell the story of that day. And let's be fair, there was some turn in one particular spot for the left-handers, but it wasn't otherwise. It wasn't massive. The pitch didn't deteriorate that much, I don't think. So I'd say 50-50 about whether it was the right thing to do or not.
So it's only the right thing to do if you end up winning, isn't it? And otherwise you get judged, even if it is the right decision. If you end up losing, it's not the right decision. Let's move back to Ash to see if he's actually working now, because I kind of binned him off and brought him back in again. Let's test him. Say something, Ash. I know he's muted. Ash's debut on this is a disaster.
I apologise.
England's fans sometimes, including myself, get a little bit aerated with Virat Kohli's kind of heart on his sleeve stuff. We heard Neil there talking about the Indians kind of like fighting fire with fire a little bit. Siraj's kind of celebrations as well. I don't mind it. I love the theatre that kind of brings, two gladiators almost like staring each other in the eyes and taking each other on. As long as it doesn't go too far, Ash, I think sledging is fine. Siraj, to a degree, went a little bit over the line, I think, when he was kind of eyeballing Ollie Robinson and squaring up to people, and he gets a little bit kind of like that and sticks his chest out and gets a little bit angry looking. But otherwise than that, I actually love Virat Kohli is probably my favourite player in world cricket. I get slated on Twitter whenever I question his captaincy. Whenever I say, well, he shouldn't have done that with the umpire, I get so many notifications saying that I'm basically the worst person in the world, in worse words. But I think I just love the way he's leading that team. He's really basically prepared to go through a brick wall, and the rest of them are following him.
Yeah, I think he's obviously a natural leader. I think it really helps. Oh,
no, you're with me. You're with me. It's just it took you about 20 seconds to start.
How he is and how he, yeah. And yeah, I think he is obviously clearly a good leader. I think he gets a little bit too in the umpire's face sometimes, and as you say, Siraj maybe needed to pick his fight a little bit better. I think picking Robinson, the size of him, but the way he leads the team is something that maybe England lack, and something that maybe they lack when they haven't got someone like Ben Stokes, someone who's a bit more fiery and a bit more sort of up and at them and in the face. And I guess almost Stuart Broad as well, another one like that who England maybe missed.
You wouldn't believe Ash is in the UK, would you? With the 20-second delay on everything he says. Neil, you're also in the UK as well. But that's the same kind of question to you. Virat expects high standards. He expects high standards physically. He expects high standards professionally. He expects high standards in the field. And he's very, I mean, I said yesterday on the podcast that at the end of a day in the field, Virat must be exhausted because he's up after every single ball. He's punching the air after half of them. He's down in the dumps after the other half. But he gives it everything, doesn't he?
He will not leave anything on the pitch, which is the way that it should be, really. I was having an argument on Twitter with someone about Virat's behaviour, and I think I said that, as long as the abuse and stuff doesn't go over the top, I'm not offended by how expressive Virat is about it. I prefer it that way than the way that some other players are, where stuff doesn't get picked up on stump mics. But let's say Anderson and Butler, you could clearly see that stuff was going back and forth with those two, but they never get
I called
done in the media.
I called Josh Butler a bit of a weasel yesterday because it's not in your face kind of hostility or sledging, is it? That's obvious. He kind of like skulks past somebody and whispers something in their ear behind the back kind of thing, which is a little bit, I don't know, it feels a little bit more underhand. It's probably no worse or better, I don't know, but it just feels a little bit more underhand.
Yeah, and the fact that those people don't get called up on it in the same way that Virat or Ben Stokes or Kagiso Rabada do. I mean, the only time Joss has really had to face up to what he said is when he got caught fat shaming Vernon Philander on the stump mic, and that's because the Sappers are very quick to raise those stump mics if there's anything untoward going about. But I much prefer the Stokes or Coley. I'm not trying to hide anything. I will fight my corner any day of the week way. I think that's certainly a more honest way to go about how you want the game played.
Got Claire on. She's watching. You can contact us and send your comments in on whatever platform you're on. If you've got any questions or any comments or whatever on the second test match, Claire's basically saying Naman knows. That's what she finishes her little conversation with. Naman knows. Naman knows everything. Naman Shah, he's our regular from... you're in Mumbai still, Naman?
Yes, I'm in Mumbai.
And so we've got another message here, and it's great to get this one. Yasanth Narain, who sent a few tweets in during our podcasts in the India-England series in the winter. And Yasanth has been in touch. He says, guys, if you remember me sending an email to you about the pitch, nice to see you in person. What was reason for India having bad record against New Zealand, and what has been the change, he says. He also says, I think we do see Virat taking rest in the middle and Ajinkya handling them. I think it wasn't the case earlier. So better exchange of ideas is happening. Could it be the case? Naman, that's a good point actually about Virat Kohli, because as you know, I've kind of been critical of Virat at times with his captaincy. I still think he follows the ball a little bit too much. There was a period in this test match where he had first, second, fourth slip, and the ball went through third slip. You look back, he got a third slip and not a second slip. The ball went through second slip, and he does kind of like fill gaps that have just been hit. But I think he's brilliant, and there is that little sort of brains trust in Team India, isn't there? With kind of Bumrah leading the bowling lineup, you've got Ajinkya Rahane in there, you've got Rohit there at slip alongside him. He listens, doesn't he?
Obviously, and I feel that this has been brought up from Dhoni's captaincy. Even Dhoni used to do that. He used to give this privilege to the senior bowlers. You would have seen Nehra in the T20s giving advices to the young bowlers. So this is the thing which he has learned from MSD, and I'm not quite a bit surprised on what is going on. And yes, even Rohit Sharma, he was asking too many things and he was taking his leads too. So it's not that Kohli is the captaincy and only he's going to make decisions. So it's good to see such environments and everyone pitching in with whatever knowledge they can bring in during this crunch situation. So it's not at all bad seeing this.
I'll try Ash again, and if we still get the delay, then I might bin you off, Ash. But what we're talking about there with Virat Kohli and the exchange of ideas, Joe Root seemed to front up to the press yesterday in the media and effectively take everything on his own shoulders. He's got experience around him too. He's got Chris Silverwood in that dressing room. There's plenty of coaches there that have got experience of captaining sides. Surely there should be some kind of exchange of ideas in terms of tactics in Team England. Let's bin him off. Let's bin him off because he's... Oh, he's there. Have you unmuted yourself now? This is probably the worst TV debut ever made.
face for radio, that's what they would say. But yeah, I think...
It's not even that good, actually.
I think they need to use... Silverwood needs to take a little bit of sort of ownership over the tactics. And Jimmy Anderson, he's such an experienced player. Why on earth was he bowling bouncers at Jasprit Bumrah? Just an utterly bizarre moment to watch. Because yes, Rooters captain should be saying this is the tactic and that isn't the tactic we should be going with. But the fact that Jimmy Anderson at 39 with however many test matches and wickets behind him isn't there saying, you know what, actually, Joe, we're getting this wrong, it worries me quite a bit, I must say.
Yeah. And I also felt as well that hanging out to dry is probably the wrong phrase, but where were the other experienced men after the game there? Joe Root was doing all of the media that I saw on his own, saying, I've got to take responsibility for those bad tactics and what have you. Maybe he said that. Maybe he took that on. He was being the leader and he was trying to take all that himself. But I'd like to see some of the other players actually saying, well, this was our fault too. It's not all about him. I mean, the bloke's basically scored 180 and 33. He's been out there pretty much all the way through the test match. He stands at slip. He has to concentrate on every single ball and captain every single ball. He needs a bit of help, doesn't he? Neil,
Sorry, who was that for? Was that for me? Sorry.
It was for Ash, but it's now for you. Root needs a bit of help, doesn't he?
Yes and no. I think it's right that he does stand up and say that it was his responsibility, because in the end, that sort of 1 hour post-drinks period where England really lost the game, Silverwood can't really do much until Joe comes off the field in that time. But yeah, Jimmy has got 160 tests behind him. He should be able to go up to Joe and say, this is the wrong tactic for these guys. Can't have an hour-long period of trying to bounce out tail enders without someone being able to say it. The thing that I reckon about this
everybody watching could see it wasn't working. So how come somebody on that pitch couldn't see?
I think the problem is within this England team, excluding Stokes as he's not playing. I think you've got Jimmy and you've got Ollie Robinson who have got their places guaranteed by their own performance. You got Rory Burns, who's got his place guaranteed by his competency and every other opener's failure. And this is a place where I don't think that if you get on the wrong side of Joe, then you lose your test place. But if you get on the right side of Joe and you're one of his mates, then we've seen with Jos Buttler, when he was underperforming even more than usual, then Joe was talking about what he brings as part of the leadership group and the stuff in the dressing room that warrants his place in this team. When being in the test squad or being in the test team can mean £750,000 a year. At the moment, I think England in both forms of the game, or both red and white ball, are places where you don't want to get on the wrong side of the captain, because it has got very cliquey. So Jimmy aside, and Ollie Robinson's very young, so his performances demand he to stay in. But if he drops off suddenly, it's only 3 tests where he's done well. Jimmy aside, who can afford to gamble £750,000 on telling Joe that he's getting things wrong?
That's a fair point. And there is an element of clickiness inside the dressing room, I think, as well. The coaching staff, they're all great players. They all play for England. They've all achieved a lot, and in their own right have a lot to tell people as well. But it does seem to be quite pally, I think, at times, and that may be completely unfounded. I don't know I've never been into the England dressing room in the last year to find out if that's true or not. But now, man, let's get back to India, shall we? Because that is the good news story. I'm fed up of griping about England all the time. I did my team. Actually, before we move on, I did my team for the 3rd test match. Rory Burns, Hasib Hamid as openers, David Malan coming in at number 3, Joe Root as captain. That's not rocket science. James Vince would be my number 5. Johnny Bairstow to take the gloves at number 6. I'd have Moeen Ali at 7. Chris Woakes coming back in because I think he's available for the 3rd test match at number 8. Ollie Robinson, Saqib Mahmood and Jimmy Anderson making up the seam attack. As soon as there is a person on Twitter, which I won't name, who basically every time I drop Josh Butler from a team, gives me absolute grief. He basically blocked me last year. He's then unblocked me today so he could pop into my direct messages to abuse me, and then has blocked me again since, so I can't even abuse him back. So that's Twitter for you. But now, Amanda, from an Indian perspective, you want to see changes to this England side? I mean, obviously, say from an Indian perspective, from a neutral's perspective, can you see the need for changes in this England side?
To be honest, what I am seeing right now is just the temporary replacements. Like I'm not seeing the hunger from the youngsters getting an opportunity in the absence of players like Broad or maybe Stokes or maybe Archer or so. You just cannot bring in someone for 2 matches and now he's not playing. Send him back to Vitality Blast or maybe the 100 and then. Just like I mentioned in the chat also yesterday, just because Moeen Ali hit 3 6s, you just cannot bring him for the current form. You have to create a pool of 20 players and work with them for next 2 years. So these are the white ball cricketers and these are the red ball. No one is questioning Root. He is not playing 20 T20s. No one has still objected on that. He is the terrific run scorer, and I don't think so. He's not going to succeed at all at that T20 level. If Joe Root plays T20 World Cup, I wouldn't be surprised. But if, as you have mentioned, Butler is not mentioned in your team, people are pouncing on you. But till date, these guys are not questioning Joe Root exclusions from T20. So what I feel is, yeah.
I am the last person in the world to want a Jay Butler off the back of an England Test shirt. I've wanted that all of my life. And he is carrying my name on the back of his shirt. I want him to succeed, but so far in this Test series, his bat is coming down at an angle. He's got a massive gate, and he was only good when he was just trying to cling on yesterday rather than actually bat properly. He's not playing very well at the moment, and I don't think anybody, whether you're a Josh Butler fan or not, and I am, can suggest that Josh Butler looks like a Test player in this series against India. I have a theory about last year when they were in a bio bubble, then they were concentrating on the red ball, and all he did all summer was play Test cricket. He got himself sorted out against the Test cricket in Test cricket, and he got into that mindset and he knew his role a little bit more. As soon as you make his season a little bit stripy and it's red, then white, then red, then white, his mind gets scrambled, and then he gets back. He can go back into one-day cricket, and he can play one-day cricket and get to top speed almost straight away. Test cricket's tougher. You need to be more technically sound, and the transition back into red ball for me, for Josh Butler, is a struggle. And I think I don't know how you can actually say it's not, because the proof is there. Back to India. How big a win, Naman, was that yesterday? Is it the biggest win overseas ever by an Indian Test side?
I would always place Gabba ahead of Lords, but yes, it was indeed a great win. To take 10 wickets inside 60 overs in the Lords against England is just a major achievement, and all the intensity, the bowlers chipping in, whether it is Siraj, Ishan, 100%, it was one of the best win for India. And no, everyone thought that either it is a draw or maybe England, but nobody gave India a chance after that crucial partnership between Bumrah and Shami. It was no looking back. But to be honest, the words you have mentioned for Butler, I would mention the same for Moeen Ali. I have a soft corner, you can say, for Bess as well as Leach. I feel that the number of runs which Moeen will score, maybe he will take lesser balls. But Bess, I feel, is a good batsman for Test cricket. He scores well also. And he is a proper spinner. I don't think so Moeen Ali as well as Butler are suited for
you're just trying to sabotage this Test team. No, man. I don't think even Dom Best would put himself in the same category of batting as Moeen. But Ash has left us, by the way, if you've been watching up from the start, because somehow Ash's technology has just completely failed him. So we've got rid of him off of this chat. But he's joined us on the chat on the on my message board to me now to say very, very sorry, everybody. He's enjoying the chat now from watching it, and he thinks I'm right about Josh Butler. So we do agree on something. We're very, very opposed to each other in terms of our views on the 100, though. Myself and Ash. Ash is he's got really into the 100. I haven't. And the reason that there is no red ball county championship cricket being played underneath this test series at the moment is because everybody's playing in crisp packets and hitting the ball as far as they can against the white ball and not at all bothered about test cricket. And the ECB needs to kind of get its priorities in order, in my opinion. Yasant's been back on. Good to have you on watching, Yasanth, and stick with us as everybody else. He says he thinks Jos Buttler should try to play a little bit more like Rishabh Pant. He can try to play his innovative strokes and focus on small impacts and create fear instead of defending. Now, I agree with that, Neil, because what I think is that Jos never quite works out how he's going to tackle a test innings. I think yesterday it was obvious how he had to tackle it. He only had one thing in his mind. That was survive. Whereas generally speaking, he's never quite sure whether he should attack, should defend. I think if Jos Buttler plays Test cricket, he goes in at number 7 and he goes in like Rishabh Pant and he blast off.
That's definitely the idea. That's always been the idea.
Well, nobody's ever told Jos Buttler this, have they?
Well, to be fair to Jos,
when has he ever done it?
Well, he hasn't been able to. It's very easy playing like Adam Gilchrist if the top 6 have gone and scored 400 already.
True.
England rarely score. Wasn't this match like the second time all year that England have scored over 300?
That's one of the other ironies of this test defeat, isn't it? That they actually managed to put a first innings score on the board.
Yeah, I mean, I'm against Jos Buttler in the test team because I don't think he'd done the work to deserve his callback initially. I don't think he'd played well enough after called up to retain his spot, but he came in for a specific thing initially as a specialist number 7 bat to either counter attack when the team's doing badly or to build on a platform. And at the same time, Adil Rashid got brought back in to try replicate his form, but England never put the runs on the board to allow either of them to bat or bowl in the manner that they were brought in to do. Jos does have that lack of clarity completely.
But Gilchrist, I remember though, Neil, with Gilchrist, and let's face it, Gilchrist is probably the best
unicorn
batsman of all time, isn't he? So it's hard. It's like saying to a leg spinner, go out there and bowl like Shane Warne, isn't it? But with I can remember England in a few Ashes tests, had Australia say 83 for 5 or 110 for 5 or something like that, and you're starting to think they might actually win this match because it was very rare at the time. But so you look back 2 hours later and Gilchrist would be 143 not out, and they'd have over 300 on the board because he'd bail them out with an attacking counter-attacking innings.
That was 2013, wasn't it?
Jos Buttler doesn't even do that.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That was 2013, wasn't it? Brad Haddin, every single match when they were about 5 down, suddenly came out and rescued them, and then Mitchell Johnson came in and cleaned up. Yeah, Jos.
But the way Gilchrist played, though, and the way Pant plays, if India are in trouble, Pant won't play any differently, will he? He will come in and he might face a couple of balls before he hits an attacking shot rather than one. But he does still go at the ball.
He does, but I think he's certainly better now in that he's more judicious about when he's going to go after. I'm
not saying you say he's better now. I'm not actually saying it's a bad thing. I think Rishabh Pant is brilliant. He's he's incredible to watch. As soon as he walks to the middle, you're going to get entertainment. And he can make a difference. And Gilchrist in a backs against the wall situation punched himself out of trouble when he had 400 for 5 on the board when he walked in. He made it 600 quickly.
I think Pant does go for his shots, but we saw it was either in the second innings or the first. I think it was definitely this match where he charged down the wicket at I think it was at Mark Wood. And then defended it from about halfway down. So he's been a lot cleverer about it. I think also one, he's usually got a bit of a platform, but two, he's got Jadeja behind him, who's averaging 50 over the last 2-3 years. That backup
That helps, doesn't
is
it?
something
Yeah.
that helps a lot. Jadeja is someone who plays as a number 7. He's like Chanderpaul a lot in the way that he shepherds the tail really, really well, and that allows Pant to go and do that. I also think that Pant is a better player than Butler when it comes to Red Bull. He's a unicorn like Gilchrist.
We've got a load of questions that have come in, so we'll run through these very quickly. So short answers on all of these. Some of them probably warrant more than a short answer. But Oliver says, where do England go from here? Where does this latest collapse leave the coaches? Now, that's an answer you can't do in a sentence, isn't it? I've already given my 11 for the next test match, so we can miss that a bit. Where it leaves the coaches is basically trying to do their job over the next 8 days, isn't it, to try and get them back into some kind of shape ahead of the third test match, I guess.
They need to look longer term for me. Contracts at the moment seem to come and go with Ashes series. Now that we've got the World Test Championship, it actually provides a little bit of a structure. So a contract should be the 2-year period of a World Test Championship and or ODI World Cup, and then you can reassess after that.
I'd make it the 4-year period of that 4-year cycle. Ollie also asks, have we reached peak Root now, man? Because I mean, Rooty went. Obviously, he's always been decent. His curve has always been pretty much upward. He had a little bit of a stagnant year or 18 months, but he's batting rather nicely at the moment now, man, isn't he?
He is at his peak, and I remember we had discussed the same when England toured India. We was discussing about his performance in Sri Lanka, and we had raised our eyebrows during India series as well, because he is the only one contributing. And when he fails, like who are the guys who will stand up? So right now he is loaded with so many things. He needs to captain the side. He needs to play well. He is scoring, yes, more than 150s, but there is going to be a time when it will be too much for him. So this load needs to be divided equally. He has been in terrific form, and if you will see, I read today itself, in this COVID times, he made the ECB bring him all the videos for the last 2 years, and he studied where he's going wrong. He studied his flaws, and he has worked so hard on his flaws.
He also studied Kane Williamson a lot, Naman, as well. He identified Kane as being somebody that was very well organised and balanced, and watched him a lot, and took the good bits out of Kane Williamson. There's plenty of those as well. Pitch Perfect Cricket says, does India continue with the same team that they had in the second test match, Neil, or do they bring in Shardul Thakur if he's back fit again, or even Ashwin?
Depends on the conditions. We've got to a stage where we have 6 really, really top class, almost all of them world class bowlers, plus Thakur, who I think will just be a backup. So they now have the option of going 2 spinner, 1 spinner, no spinner.
Sorry to jump in, Neil, but Shardul Thakur bowled really nicely in that first test match. I thought he was really good. You go back how many years? Say late 70s, early 80s with India coming to these shores. He would have been their spearhead. Because India had nobody else at the time. They used to bring a Shardul Thakur, they used to bring a Mark Elam type, and then they'd have 3 spinners. Whereas now you've got a pace battery there.
Yeah, Shardul would be taking off the shine before handing it over to the 4 spinners.
3 overs at the start, and that would be the last you see of him. Yeah,
he's a backup now. He's like Sam Curran should be for England. He's someone who can come in if the conditions are right, do a really tidy job as the 4th bowler, and provide a good batting option. But he shouldn't be any more. He certainly shouldn't be. I don't think any of the bowlers, apart from maybe Bumrah, who is a once in a generation type bowler in England, no one should have their place guaranteed. It should be purely conditions merited.
Would you like to see Ashwin coming into the side now, man? Headingley isn't the same as paradise it used to be. It does take spin. Old Trafford's known to be a spinning surface. We've seen Parkinson and Keedy and the like enjoy themselves with Lancashire down the years, and the Oval could be helpful to spin as well. Would you like to see Ashwin coming back into the team?
I don't think so. Maybe in Old Trafford, but I would like to bring in Umesh Yadav. I would like to bring him in place of Ishant Sharma. Nothing against Ishant, but I want to add one more bowler who will consistently add 145 with a kind of Mark Wood. So I'll go for Ishant for Umesh in place of Ishant, and not even Shardul right now. I would like to add more pace battery right now and just allow them to go for the kill.
I'd go against that just because Ishant offers bounce, which I don't think Umesh does. Umesh is a bit skiddier in the same way that Shami and Bumrah are. So I think Ishant actually provides that point of difference, which is why you can put up with him being lower 80s compared to the high 80s of everyone else.
I'm glad you're in the centre of the shot there, Neil, because me and Naman are very short beside you, aren't we? Anthony says, why on earth do England pick batsmen with such terrible techniques when they have batsmen like James Vince? Now, I don't know how much of that is tongue-in-cheek, because James Vince gets a lot of knockers on Twitter as well as a lot of support as well. I would bring James Vince back into this Test side. You look at James Vince, every time he's stepped up a level, it's taken him a while to sort himself out and get used to it. But once he has done, he's been fine after that. I don't think England ever really gave him enough continuity and enough time. You look at the amount of Test matches Dom Sibley has had. You look at the amount of Test matches Ollie Pope's had. And have they done any more than James Vince? No, they haven't. Is James Vince's ceiling quite high? Yes, I think it is. I think he's worth having another go with, Neil.
You're preaching to the converted there. I think, imagine if Nathan Lyon hadn't picked up that ball so perfectly back on that first Test. What could have been? He takes time to get acclimatized, but then when he does, he has the technique to excel. So I would bring him back, especially because no one else is covering themselves in glory.
He's good to watch as well. He's good to watch. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, that one, I know it's white ball cricket, and I always say don't pick a Test team off white ball form. But that century he got in the ODI, I think would give him a lot of confidence coming back into the Test team too. Different format, but it's still a century in international cricket.
But didn't he score like a runnable 200 earlier this season for Hampshire?
He's good.
His recent red ball's been pretty handy.
He's a good player. He's a good player, and I think people there's a lot of people say, "Oh, he's had his chance, didn't make it. He's obviously not good enough." That's a very quick judgment without actually really thinking it through. I think James Vince, I think, deserves another chance in Test cricket. Rishi, this is more controversial, gentlemen. This is a little bit about Lords. He says, "Why do the English audience show so much hate?" Hate that word. I hate the word hate. Dislike. We'll use dislike. Why do the English audience show so much dislike towards opponent players? Even they threw corks at KL Rahul when he was fielding near the boundary. Now, I think the KL Rahul thing, let's just nail that down first. There is a history over the last 15 years, probably even stretches on long before that, of people popping corks on the balcony and then dropping onto the outfield. You put that into Google, there's pictures dating back a long, long time. That is not a new phenomenon. I don't know if anybody was actually hurling them at him. Was there any intent there, Naman, Neil?
I think I remember.
I think there was intent, but not malicious intent. I think I don't think English fans hate opposing teams, but I think Lords can attract a certain demographic who don't really care about what they're doing all the time. So being careful about where your cork is flying as you pop your third bottle of champagne that day becomes less of an issue. So I think it's
by then I can understand why.
It's more careless rather than malicious. But KL did have about 8 to 10 corks around him, which made it seem like a bit of a wheeze to some people who'd had a few too many glasses of bubbly.
Should totally different question, Naman, but should what was his name? The guy that came on with the shirt on. The
Yeah,
intruder.
Chavo.
Java.
Yeah,
Should Javo go get a game for India next time round? No?
no, not maybe as a foreign player in England.
What do you reckon, Neil? Do you reckon Javo 69 is worth a test place?
Well, I mean, if we're determined to give up on Stuart Binney, which I thought was a massive mistake anyway, then maybe Javo can come and take that place. Absolutely.
A couple more questions that we've got before we wrap it up today. Ash has come back. I tell you what, Ash, I think he's feeling guilty that his technology let him down. He's posted about 20. I can't get through all of these, Ash. Really can't. But he says, Bracey, Milan, Vince, Pope. Who would you have at 3 in order? He says. I'd basically have Milan at 3, Ash, and I'd have Vince at number 5. I'd have Pope waiting his turn a little bit longer because he's got quite used to over the last year making pretty 22s and not kicking on. And Bracey, I rate a lot. I don't think it was fair on James Bracey to come in and have 2 test matches knowing that he wasn't going to get another one for a long, long time because Josh Butler was going to come back into the side. And I think James Bracey is getting unfairly slated. I don't think he covered himself in glory in those 2 test matches, but you're watching for Gloucestershire. He's a very good player as well, and he's got a future at international level too. Ankit says England team should play Javo. Oh, I've already asked that, Ankit. I've already asked that. Instead of Sibley. Ankit's going for Javo in for Sibley. And Big Time Dwaffer says, same to Crawley, Sibley and Pope. Go get some form and you'll have a chance. He's basically saying send them back to the county game. Crawley, Sibley and Pope. Go get some form in the county game. And it's not the end of the world. If you get dropped by England, go and get a load of county runs, come back. You might be a better player and you might enjoy it more next time around. If you're actually scoring runs in an international team rather than always being scrutinised and maybe on the chopping board, I reckon the scoring the runs bit might be a little bit more enjoyable as a test experience. That's all we have time for. We've actually run over today because we've had so many questions, mainly from Ash, who basically couldn't say enough on the actual. But thank you, Ash, for trying. Thanks for Neil and for Naman. Look, good to see you, Naman, as well. And we'll see you again soon. And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everybody. Cricket Badger Podcast. Type it into Google. You'll be able to hear the audio version as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. If you're listening on whatever podcast platform that you listen to it on, subscribe on there as well. It'll come straight into your ears, straight into your eyes, and you'll be able to keep up to date as we go through the rest of this series. Then it's the IPL, then it's the Ashes, plenty more to come. World 2020 Cup, there's everything. We'll be on probably twice a day at this rate if we carry on doing these daily podcasts. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you again soon. Gonna have tomorrow off, and what's the date tomorrow? It's Wednesday tomorrow. Wednesday and Thursday off, and then we're going to come back on Friday for another version of the pod then.